Hey folks, this is Kelani. Patch 8.3 will be introducing a whole plethora of new content and new ways to experience the game, and unsurprisingly we'll also be seeing 2 new allied races added to our ever-growing roster of playable characters. These 2 races might catch you off guard a little bit too. No one ever saw these 2 coming. What's that? Everyone knew the Mechagnomes and the Vulpera would become allied races sometime this expansion? I don't believe you. I was totally blown away by that announcement. Alright, I guess we can put the sarcasm away for a little bit and have a chat about these 2 cool new races coming in patch 8.3 and take a deep dive into all the little details, including some incredibly powerful racial abilities. Let's kick things off with the Vulpera, the friendliest furry foxes under the banner of the Horde. Class options are always going to be one of the most important things to consider when you're talking about an allied race, so let's go over what classes you can play as a Vulpera first. There's a pretty good selection for the Vulpera. They can be warriors, hunters, rogues, priests, shamans, mages, warlocks, and monks. So the only classes you won't be able to play are the demon hunters and death knights, obviously, as well as the paladins and druids. Most of these choices make sense. I can't really imagine these scrappy chappies as a paladin, though the druid could maybe have been squeezed in there. Demon hunters are always going to be off limits for allied races for now, along with the death knights. I think a rogue or hunter Vulpera works incredibly well, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of players who are currently playing rogue or hunter fancy the swap to Vulpera just for that theme. The option for shaman is really interesting, but I guess if goblins can be shamans, then pretty much everyone can, right? Vulpera also get their very own special totem model, which, in my opinion, looks amazing. That's probably my new favourite totem model. It fits the race perfectly, and it's downright cute. The little tail and everything, it's just done so well. I imagine quite a few people will be very, very excited by the idea of Vulpera shaman with this totem in play, but let's move on. A key part of any race when you're deciding whether or not you want to play one is their racial abilities. These have typically moved away from actual throughput increases and more towards fun flavor items that are kind of cool, but aren't necessary for any type of content. It looks like the Vulpera will be following that ideal, even though some of these could be quite powerful and they have a lot of potential. The main racial that seems like it's going to be used for all sorts of nonsense is Make Camp. This allows you to set up a camp anywhere in the world, nearly as often as you want. Then you have another racial ability called Return to Camp. This one has a 1-hour cooldown and will return you to wherever you made your camp previously, so you can essentially create your own Hearthstone location in addition to your Hearthstone set in an inn. If you have a favourite hideaway somewhere or a favourite farming spot, maybe a favourite dungeon you always end up running every day, you can set up your camp anywhere you fancy and port to it anytime on a 1-hour cooldown. Now, I assumed there would be some limitations to this, maybe a max range, or you'd have to be on the same continent as your camp and whatever else. I placed my camp at the top of Desert Allure and ported over to Shattrath just to test if I could return to camp from anywhere. The good news is it worked, straight back to Zuldazar across a loading screen from one planet to another. Good stuff. The bad news is that this is probably one of the best racials we've ever had access to, so good luck trying to resist the temptation to swap over to the foxy life. The next racial for the Vulpera is Bag of Tricks. You can pull a trick from your bag to use on an ally or an enemy. That doesn't really tell us much, and for right now you just throw a little vial at your target and that does practically nothing. A racial that seems to go alongside this one is Rummage Your Bag. Change your chosen tricks, but it's marked not yet implemented, so it's not surprising that it doesn't do anything just yet, but we can always speculate. I'm guessing you can swap your tricks to different bonuses, buffs or debuffs, and then you can decide to use your tricks cooldown on an ally to help them or an enemy to hurt them. Hopefully that will end up being a useful general purpose racial. They also have a fire resistance racial which reduces the fire damage they take by 1%. It's a shame we didn't have these chaps back in the Molten Core, eh? I guess their fire resistance comes from being around a campfire all night long. They also have Nose for Trouble. When you first take damage from an enemy, reduce that damage by 5% of your max health. That's actually really cool, and potentially very useful for anyone who decides to tank or PvP on a Vulpera. If a mob hits you for less than 5% of your max health with the first swing, I guess they just don't do any damage to you. Not super useful in long duration fights, but when you start tanking lots of ads, all of that damage reduction will start to add up. It should also make sure no one in PvP can get the jump on you. Their first hit will always be reduced so you have more time to react. And then they also have Vulpera Survival Kit. You have a chance to find an additional satchel of goods when you kill a humanoid. Basically, you just steal all their stuff, loot the pockets, check their underwear, and don't forget the socks. People always hide money in their socks. We're not too sure what's going to be in the satchel, but it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that it's going to be extra profession materials, maybe a bit of extra cloth, and some grey vendor junk thrown in for good measure. All allied races also come with their own special mount, which is obviously super important as well. For the Vulpera, that mount is the Caravan Hyena. It's the usual hyena model, just a different colour with some leather straps and covers, but it's also souped up with a caravan canopy to keep you dry through all those nasty Azeroth storms. I think this looks fantastic. While the mount is stationary, but as soon as you start to move, things get a little too crazy for my taste. I imagine that could cause some motion sickness issues too, but if you like the look of it, it is a rather unique mount. The Vulpera also come with quite a variety of customization options too. You can swap around their skin colour, which really just swaps their fur colour more than anything else. The different options cover almost any combination you could really want to make yourself look like the various types of foxes you might actually see out in the world, with a few extras thrown in for good measure. There's white fur for an Arctic fox, some muddier colours for desert or forest foxes, there are even red panda-esque colours too. You can change your fur colour at the barber whenever you want, so it's definitely something you can have fun with and even change things up to match a specific transmog. Both males and females have the same skin colour choices from what I can tell so far, and honestly the different genders don't look too dissimilar right now, especially if you set them up with the exact same colours, faces and everything else. The face options change how your fur looks too, so that's definitely going to be something that might take a little while to settle on. There are a few different markings and different eye colours as well. Perhaps the most important part of the customization for the Vulpera will be the ears. I was surprised by how many different types of ears they decided to include, and they all come with two variations. One with earrings and studs and rings, and then one without any jewellery. You can have big floppy ears, bent over ears, scrappy ears. They did a really good job with this set of customization for the Vulpera in my opinion. You can change your fur a little more with 3 different patterns. The first is just clear fur for the most part, the second marking adds stripes on your ears and arms, and the third one adds spots instead of the stripes. And just in case you were worried about the mouth or snout on your fox person, you can change that up as well. Short snouts, longer snouts, it's pretty cool being able to change the shape of your mouth for once. I don't think we've really had that much for other races. There's even a bit of a bent nose for one of the snouts too. And that's pretty much it for the customization, but how do we get our hands on these furry little fellas? How do you unlock the Vulpera as an allied race when patch 8.3 comes around? It's really simple actually. There's 2 main requirements, as there usually is with allied races. The first is an Exalted reputation. You need to hit Exalted with a Voldanite on at least 1 character. That should be incredibly easy for pretty much every Horde player. Chances are you're already Exalted, but even if you've been slacking, you have plenty of time to get it done. Just do all of the Voldanite emissaries that pop up and throw in a few Voldoom world quests for good measure, and you should be exalted by the time 8.3 rolls around easily. The second requirement is to complete the Secrets in the Sands achievement. That just requires you to finish all of the Voldoom storylines. Again, something that won't take any time at all to anyone who has been playing BFA for a while now. Get those 2 requirements done before 8.3 goes live, and all that's left to do after that is complete the little intro quest to recruit the Vulpera and you're good to go. You can create any number of Foxy alts after that, so go crazy. It's going to be hilarious seeing all of the dungeon groups made up entirely of Vulpera for the first few weeks after 8.3 goes live. There's one last thing that makes allied races super special, the heritage armor. All allied races ship with heritage armor ready to earn, you just have to get yourself leveled up to actually unlock it. The Vulpera heritage armor fits the race incredibly well, and I think we might have seen a few NPCs sporting a getup pretty similar to this one. They even have a sack on their bag full of goodies instead of a cloak, so expect to see more interesting objects appear in that slot from here on out. That's it for the Horde side of things. Let's hop across the faction barrier and check out the Mechagnome allied race. Just like with the Vulpera, let's kick things off with the class choices. Mechagnomes can be warriors, hunters, rogues, priests, mages, warlocks, and monks. So the same options as the Vulpera with the exception of the shaman. So no souped up totems for the alliance this time around, I'm afraid. The rest of the class options are pretty typical, I would say. Nothing out of the ordinary, and with the exception of Death Knights, it's also the same exact choices you can get if you were making an ordinary gnome. So what kind of racial abilities will these upgraded gnomes have access to? Great question. The first one we have to look at is called Hyper-Organic Light Originator, or HOLO for short. Using this racial summons 2 mirror images of yourself for a short duration. These images aren't just for show either, they actually pack a bit of a punch. They'll distract and fight your enemies for you so you can just relax and take a breather once in a while. What use is there in being a genius if you have to do your own dirty work? That's on a 3-minute cooldown and could actually end up being decent DPS gains or PvP distractions when you compare it to some of the other racials we have in the game. The Mechagnomes also have a Skeleton Pinky racial, which allows them to unlock chests and doors with a max skill of 600. So you'll never need a rogue, a blacksmith, a jewel crafter, a scribe, or whoever makes the next unlocking profession item thing ever again. Mechagnomes are their own lockpicks. All you have to do is give up your arms and legs and replace them with robotics. Now this next racial is actually kind of crazy. Combat analysis might look a little familiar if you were raiding during Uldir. It's almost an exact copy of one of the old traits from the Uldir gear. Gather and analyze combat data every 5 seconds, increasing your primary stat by 50, stacking up to 8 times. Your buff decays while out of combat, so as long as you stay in combat for any length of time, you can gain up to 400 primary stat for just existing. That's actually really powerful for a racial ability, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up nerfing this a little bit before it goes live. So far it looks like Mechagnomes might have some of the best racials available. But wait, it gets better. Mastercraft allows you to ignore all of the rules of professions. You're your own anvil, your own cooking fire, even your own smelting forge. You also obviously have every profession tool hidden away under that cloak or up your robotic sleeve, so you don't need any of those either. Mechagnomes just became the single best race for any of your crafting alts, and I love it. There's one more on the table, and this one is also pretty powerful when you think about it. Rearm causes you to heal for 20% of your max health whenever you drop below 20% health. That's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. The effect isn't really anything new, but to have this as a racial is already crazy. What makes this racial absolutely insane is the cooldown. 1.5 minute cooldown on an effect that usually carries a pretty lengthy cooldown when we see it on Azerite traits, essences, or even trinkets. With a 1.5 minute cooldown, this could proc 4 or more times in a single raid encounter, and it's a racial ability. Add that to everything else and you have a recipe for mass race changes when the Mechagnomes go live. Moving on to the racial mount, the Mechagnomes get the Mechagon Meccano Strider. So many mechas, but this is also quite unique. I can't lie, I laughed quite a bit when I first saw this mount. It just looks a little daft, but it fits the theme well. It's a high-tech version of our beloved Meccano Striders, and compared to those robo-chickens, this does look rather refined. It also doesn't give me anywhere near as many issues when I start to run around on it when compared to the Vulpera mount, so that's always nice. The Mechagnome customization options are also interesting. As you might imagine, they're very similar to gnomes, except you get to replace parts of them with machinery. You have some choices as to what you're replacing, but the arms and legs will always be mechanical. Changing their skin color does something really cool too. You can swap between a variety of actual skin tones, but then you can also choose what color all of your robot bits are. You can go with the flashy gold, a clean silver, or even just make yourself a rust bot. All of the 3 color variations were seen throughout Mechagon Mechagon, especially with the Mechagon mounts, so it's awesome that they're giving us that choice with the allied race as well. You also have a few different choices for the face. I think a few of these are similar to what you can have as a normal gnome, then you just have the Mechagnome extras on top of it. Depending on how you go with the extra bits and pieces, you might not see a great deal of the face, so this might not matter as much. That might be why you don't have that many choices. These Mechagnomes wouldn't be worth calling a gnome if we didn't have some crazy hairstyles to choose from, so there's a handful of those thrown in as well. Honestly, there aren't too many to choose from right now, so we might see some more added in as the PTR progresses, or maybe they were just too focused on adding in the other bits and bobs that make Mechagnomes special. The hair colours are a bit lacking too. You have the usual blondes, blacks, browns and what have you, but where's the green? Where's the pink? These guys call themselves gnomes? I think our normal gnomes need to teach them a little bit about fashion. At least they do know how to rock an awesome stash. The facial hair options for the males are better than the actual hair options in my opinion. Look at that glorious lip caterpillar. Those are some well looked after whiskers. And then here's where things get really special, the modifications. This first round deals with the headpiece. You can change how your ears look, what kind of speakers you want in there, maybe add an antenna, just to increase the range and frequencies, science-y things. You can have a larger faceplate with goggles, just the eye replacements with a metallic jaw, or something akin to an aviator's cap with the skull plate and goggles, or you can actually have nothing on your face at all. I was a little surprised that having nothing was an option, seeing as you can't change your legs or hands, but as far as head things go, you could just look like a normal gnome if you wanted to. It's super weird seeing that ears change so much, and I don't think I'll ever really get past how odd the Mechagnomes look in general. I certainly don't think I'll play one, but the variety of choice is definitely a step forward for WoW character creation. You can also change up the way your arms and legs look. For the arms you have 4 choices: robot hands with more plating, clamp hands, and clamp hands with more plating. That's kind of it, and you have to choose one of those options. If you could choose something a little less mechanical, I might be more inclined to make a Mechagnome, but I actually don't really like gnomes that much either. The legs only have 2 options right now, and they're kind of hard to see on the character creation screen. You can have robotic legs, or robotic legs with a bit more plating. Interestingly, these legs are what you will always see if you don't wear a robe in-game. Pants or trousers or shorts only change your crotch area. The mechanical legs will never be covered up unless you use a robe. The same goes for your arms, though shoulders typically cover those up a bit better anyway. We might see more options included in the future, but that's all we have for now. To unlock the Mechagnome allied race so you can play it for yourself and take advantage of those pretty broken racial abilities, you'll need to complete the 2 typical requirements: Exalted with a Reputation and the completion of a storyline. The reputation you need is the Rustbolt Rebellion, no surprises there. You'll need to hit Exalted with a Mechagon reputation before you can make a Mechagnome, and you also need to finish the Mechagon storyline. The achievement for that one is called the Mechagonian Threat. While Mechagon is newer than the Voldoon requirements for the Vulpera, it's still content that you can get done very easily before patch 8.3 rolls around. Complete the Mechagon world quest each day and you should be exalted easily before the next patch hits. The storyline achievement is also really easy to complete, it just takes a bit of time. So be sure to knock out both of these requirements before patch 8.3 releases, and then all you need to do after that is complete the short intro quest line to unlock the Mechagnome allied race when 8.3 releases. And last but not least, let's have a look at the Mechagnome Heritage Armor Set. It's pretty much all robot themed, as you might expect, and putting on the full set kind of makes you look like King Mechagon. I mean, it obviously works very well for a Mechagnome, but I think this might be my least favourite Heritage Armor set so far. That might be because it looks too similar to some of the robots we encounter in the Mechagon dungeon, or it could just be that I don't really like the Mechagnome theme all too much anyway, but either way, if you're super hyped to reroll a Mechagnome, then the Heritage Armor should suit you well. And that covers everything relating to the 2 new allied races coming in 8.3, what they look like, what their racials are, what classes you can play, the whole shebang. Personally, I'm really liking the idea of making a Vulpera rogue when they come out. Something about that combination works really well in my mind. It also helps that I don't really have to do any extra work to actually unlock the new allied races, because I have all of the requirements done anyway. Just playing the game a bit should get you exalted with the appropriate reputations, and the storylines were completed at the start of BFA for me. You might have to go back and do some extra work if you haven't been playing since launch, but it shouldn't take you too long. Both of these allied races are available on the PTR right now, so you can hop on and check out all of this stuff for yourselves, play around in the character creation, tinker with the various new racial abilities, see what all the animations look like, dancing, flirting, joking, all that good stuff. You can even race change your current character to see how you would look as one of the new races. All the services are free on the PTR, you just have to keep copying your character until the right service pops up for you. Personally, I think both allied races are a good fit for their respective factions, and it's not like we didn't see these ones coming from a mile away anyway. It's just nice that they're finally being added into the game. It's super strange coming back from Classic where you only have 4 races per faction, and after these races go live, we'll have 12 races per faction to choose from. How many more allied races can they really add? I'm actually really excited to see what the next expansion will bring our way. If we're really going deep into the Void theme, we may eventually see Ethereals as a playable character. That's actually really exciting, and allied races seem to be one of the dev team's major selling points right now, so who knows? But that's it for the 8.3 allied races. What do you think of the Vulpera and the Mechagnomes? Will you absolutely play either of these new races on your faction, or would you maybe even swap faction to play them? You're gonna go Horde for the Vulpera, aren't you? I knew it. Everyone will be playing a fox before the expansion is over. How about those crazy racial abilities? Some of them have got to get nerfed for sure, right? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.